Well, hey guys, welcome back to Verified Christian Podcast. We are super excited to be with you here today. Actually, we are stoked for this. I'm here with Brett Yoder and Justin Turner. Welcome to the podcast.
We need some like laughter.
Do we have like
applause.
an applause or laughter or something?
Laughter and applause.
I just feel like there's a special moment for Justin. Oh, wait, turn up the applause. There it is.
Yeah, Justin, wow.
Justin,
all those people are like,
dude,
Justin.
That was way more applause than like Mark Timmons got in our last podcast.
That's true.
He
was
got
a lot
like
more.
2 claps.
Mm-hmm. Oh. You got thousands.
Thousands, dude.
How are you feeling being on a podcast?
The lights are bright.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are on my ears and right in front of my face.
What's in your ears exactly?
These headphones.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You look super cool in them.
You're so cool.
Oh, thank you.
Those are my special ones too. You have different ones than Cody and I.
Thanks, Brett.
Because you broke the other ones.
I just touched them.
He's so strong. He just touches
didn't even
them.
know his own strength. No, it's not your fault. It's okay. But for real, it's coming out of your budget. So. And that's what we're talking about today. Thank you, Jonah. Hey, we got Jonah running the sound and stuff back there. Jonah, appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thanks, bro. That's all.
Well, hey, it's actually fun talking about the budget as a nice segue. We're not here to talk about budgets. We're here to talk about youth ministry in general. So here's a fun fact for you. Both Brett and I have been youth pastors for junior high and high school kids in the past, and Justin is a high school pastor currently. So we thought we'd come on and share some hilarious stories and also talk about the value of youth ministry and what our kids are facing in a world like today. Because I think it'll better equip us to know how to love the kids in our churches.
Yes. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
You probably have tons of stories already.
I have some.
Yeah.
You want to share one?
Okay. What?
Or should we get going? Or
Yeah.
do you need us to warm it up?
Warm it up
a little bit?
Yeah.
No, I think he should just do it cold turkey.
Oh.
What kind of story?
Like anything good?
It has to be like
someone. People
story,
need to cry.
Oh,
that's for sure.
People need to cry. Well.
Because it's so touching.
Oh, because it's so touching.
Hilariously touching.
This is hard. Oh man.
Didn't we prep you? We gave you like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes notice.
Stage fright. It's okay. Everyone gets it on their first podcast.
Okay. Well.
Okay, one of my favorite stories.
Just cut him off. Guys, we're so excited to have Justin on here with us. And Justin, we're going to have you back in the future, but this is your first one, so there's grace for you today.
There's grace.
Yeah. I just came expecting that I was going to get bullied by you two today.
No, what?
Not at all.
Justin,
we love you.
We're pastors.
You're youth pastors, so I know what it's like.
True.
Former youth pastors.
Yeah.
I'm just ready. I'm just
Sharks in pastors' clothing.
Sharks.
Oh, man. Youth ministry's so fun. Brett, you got loads of stories. Hit us with a good one.
I do have some stories. One of my favorites, because I'm drinking coffee right now, so it brings it up in my mind. We are on a missions trip, and our mission trips were to go to other Calvary chapels around us. This is when I lived in Georgia, so it was really easy to get to other Calvary chapels because everything was really close. So you would drive like 2 hours, get to one, stay for a couple nights, do like painting and maintenance and yard work and all that kind of stuff just to bless them. We'd go out in their cities and share the gospel and stuff. It was really fun. It was kind of cool. So we did 4 churches, I think, this one trip that we did. We went to South Carolina and through Georgia and stuff. But anyway, usually we had a rule. I don't know if you guys ever had this, but the kids weren't allowed to drink coffee. Just because when they drink coffee, it's just a new level of excitement, that they get to. And I feel like coffee kind of makes them a little bit crazy. I don't know. Do you guys have similar experiences?
All my kids were super calm.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Obedient, reserved.
But anyway, they worked all day. And one kid came up, politely said, "Could I have some coffee?" And I was just like, man, he has worked all day. He looks he looks exhausted, and they've been painting and being out in the sun and stuff. So I was like, sure, you can make some. I already made some, and it's all gone, but you can make your own. Do you know how? And he's like, yeah, of course I know how to make coffee. So I'm like, okay, great. And about 20 minutes later, he comes up to me, and he's like, he has a cup. And he's like, Brett, this coffee tastes disgusting, and it's not even that dark. And I look in it, and it's just like a little bit dirty water. And I was like, how did you make that coffee? And he shows me, like, pulls me into the kitchen and shows me, and I open up the lid of the coffee maker, and all the whole beans were not ground. He just put the whole beans in there, and he put the coffee like poured, or the water poured over it, and so it wasn't actually getting the coffee. It just made it kind of dirty looking. And I was like, bro, that's not how you make coffee. You have to actually ground the coffee. But everyone gave him a pretty hard time for that. Actually, I used it in my sermon that night teaching at one of the churches. It was pretty great.
A form of godliness, but denying its power.
That's pretty much it. I
like
always
people who don't grind their coffee beans before brewing.
I always use coffee as like good analogies and stuff like that, because there's lots of good ones like that.
I got a good one. There's this kid. I won't give his real name because his real name doesn't matter. For anyone who knows, maybe from my old youth group and you're listening, you know the name Chewie. That's all you need to know. That's his nickname, is Chewie. And Chewie is one of those kids who is brilliant but does the most unbrilliant things. Especially if someone's offering him small amounts of money or some sort of dare.
No.
But they decided one camp to make this drink. And by the way, parents always think it's a great idea that when their kids go to camp, they're just going to give them like 2 liters of soda and Mountain Dew and chips and sugar and Sour Patch Kids and all the stuff they would never give them if they were at home. They're like, oh, here you go to camp with your friends and have fun. Not thinking about the poor college-age leaders that have to like handle them at 2 a.m. when they're having like a sugar rush. But it's so funny, and I'm totally going to do it to my kid when I send to camp. I'm going to be like, all right, buddy, what do you want? Do you want like Coca-Cola? Make sure to give your youth pastor a hard time.
Here's $100 for you to get snacks all
week long. I'm going to be like, hey, you got friends going with you? Here, take some for them too. You know? Because I think that's part of the joy of it. But they took a Mountain Dew, and they put gummy worms in it. I'm trying to remember if I got all the ingredients right. Gummy worms in it. They put the little sugar sour dots. You know what I'm talking about?
Sugar sour.
They're called dots, like some sort of candy.
Oh, I know
like
dots.
A sugary dot.
Okay, yeah.
Put those in there. They put the Sour Patch Kids in the Mountain Dew. All this is going into the Mountain Dew. A bag of Doritos, small bag of Doritos. They put that into the Mountain Dew. And then they took like the little dipstick, you know, where you like lick it and dip it in the sugar, and they just dumped the sugar straight into it, and maybe some other things. And they shook it up. And they put it out in the sunshine and let it sit for a whole day.
Why?
Then they dared Chewie to drink it, and dude, he did. And it was so funny because we have no idea this is going on. Like, because we had quite a few kids there, and I mean, we were vigilant leaders, but somehow these kids pulled it off. And he drinks this concoction that they made. That's what they called it, the concoction. And then comes down because my brother and I were spinning the merry-go-round for the kids. We're at this camp, we had this merry-go-round. Oh, the kids were getting on it. We're just spinning it so fast. And he comes running down and jumps on the merry-go-round. And we're spinning him and spinning. We have no idea. And then all of a sudden, he's like, I don't feel so well. Can you guys get me off? And then he just starts throwing up iridescent green slush. Like, it was...
He wasn't on the...
Yeah, he was. Like, he throws up on the merry-go-round. He's thrown up on the ground. And
was the throw up just like
no? Because we were stopping it. He's throwing up and he's getting off. And he's like, my brother's trying to drag him to the nurse because we're trying to figure like what on earth is going on. Like literally, looks like radioactive, like
oh no,
hashy sludge coming out of his mouth in clumps. And we're just like, what on earth? And then we're like, were you drinking Mountain Dew? Because it's like bright green. He's like, oh, that's the Mountain Dew, all right. And he just goes back to like puking and. We found out, and it was banned after that. And for like the rest of those kids, because they were all in 6th grade, so the rest of their time in junior high, they would always every camp try and sneak out and make another concoction.
Wait, the concoctions were banned, or Mountain Dew in general?
The concoctions were banned.
Okay, that makes sense. Because why would you want to do that anyway? Kids are so funny, man.
So funny.
It's the things they want to try. Like, how much sugar do you think would be in? I mean, Mountain Dew itself has what, like 55 grams of sugar?
I thought it was 64.
Is it 64?
64.
And then, so you have 64
Well, and it was
grams.
like the big Mountain Dew bottle.
Okay, so maybe more.
It's probably 150
And then
grams.
you're pouring in sugar.
And then more sugar. And the Dorito chips, that's disgusting. And then they set the sun so it'd break down.
Man, that sounds so gross.
What kind of Dorito chips? Was it just nacho cheese?
Yeah, nacho cheese Dorito chips in there. And
Cool Ranch wouldn't be as bad.
Cool Ranch would have been better.
Yeah,
Sweet chili.
At least it made it cool, you know, kind of. When we were doing conferences in Georgia, we used to do an icebreaker. we would have 300-400 youth kids there from all different churches. And so we always tried to make it the grossest we possibly could. And so one year, I think we did the McDonald's Happy Meal challenge. So you basically like take everything that comes in a Happy Meal besides the toy.
No, I was gonna say including the toy.
We gave them the toy later, but we would blend it all up, and then they would have to drink it. That was pretty gross.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, but the worst one though, you probably have seen this online because it's a lot of youth groups do this. But you're sitting up on the stage, and we give them a Coke, and we say, okay, quickest one to drink this Coke wins for the Icebreaker, and there's usually like 10 people up there. And so they're like, oh, easy piece of cake. They're all excited. And I was like, okay, but first you got to take off your sock and put it over the Coke, and you got to drink through your sock. Have you ever seen that before?
That's disgusting.
You should do it with your youth group. It's so funny. And so they're like, oh, that's kind of gross, but I'll still do it. It's just my feet, And then right before they do it, they all have their socks on. I was like, okay, now pass it to the person to your left.
Oh, no.
So everyone's drinking their Coke as fast as they can.
That's how you get foot and mouth disease.
I know, it's really funny. Well, a couple kids did, yeah.
They actually did?
God bless them. Yeah, they lost their mouth and everything, but
Foot and mouth is like when you get athlete's foot on your mouth.
no, I'm
Like
just
your
kidding.
face
No
is
one got
disgusting.
anything, but it was pretty gross.
Do you remember the Wheel of Misfortune?
Yes, I was going to
Oh
bring
my
that up
gosh.
too. I love
That was at
Wheel of
Camp
Misfortune.
Bradley?
Yeah, but they banned
John
it.
Corson's church. They did because the janitors were so tired of cleaning up throw up.
Yeah.
All the years the Wheel of Misfortune was there, I was a student and I wouldn't go to camp when they went there. Because I
wouldn't go?
I would not go to those camps.
Well, it's easy though because you just don't break rules.
No, but some of the wheel stuff is you spin it and you get to like nominate or pick someone for it. And I knew I'd be the guy that get picked because that's the kind of life I lived. And so I didn't go because I was so scared. Because they did horrible things. Like they would take like cookies and put cat food in the middle and then slugs in it, like escargot, and then make kids eat it.
Yeah, they had like
It was horrible.
What was it? The brownie surprise or something like that. It looked like just a normal brownie, but it had a surprise in it.
Had to eat a tub of mayonnaise.
I don't remember. I thought it was awesome. One kid, he got the punishment will come at a time that you don't know or whatever. That's what it said. Do you remember that one?
Is that the one you stick them in the slide?
Yeah.
In the dark?
So in the middle of the night, leaders
This is so
go
messed up.
and grab this kid, and you put like eggs and stuff like that on his head, like just really nasty, and then you put him down this 100-foot slide.
But you put a life
into-
jacket on first, parents.
Sure,
just so you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
because
Yeah,
they're going
it's
into Lake
safe.
Bradley.
It's very
at
safe.
midnight.
Yeah, it's safe, and there's a leader in the water like waiting for him and stuff too. But anyway, can you imagine that? Like waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, you're exhausted, and you get put down the slide.
Throwing his tumble. See, you couldn't do that stuff anymore. You get in trouble for that. I mean, they
know.
banned that when I was in high school, but horrible stuff.
Oh, I loved it.
I think
it needs to come back.
I had this kid who it was his friends did, and it always starts with a middle school boy getting dared to do something really dumb, and maybe it's even dumber if there's a middle school girl that he likes watching. But they dared him to take like the whole canister of black pepper, and how they pull this off when there's leaders watching, I have no idea. But they took like a piece of ham and he poured it over the ham so that it was like peppered outlined. Like there's like when the ham was eaten, there was like a clear spot on his plate that's shaped in that ham with like this whole pepper outline around it. So that's how much pepper he dumped on it. Then he ate a whole helping of raw onions. Then he felt sick, and so he downed a whole thing of like lemonade, a whole bottle of lemonade he ran and bought out of the concession stand. And once again, how he pulled that off without us seeing, I have no idea. And I'm in the lunchroom, and all of a sudden I just see this kid get up in pain, and he's like hunched over and moving towards the door, and I just know it's coming, right? I've seen enough throw up at this point to know what it looks like. And I grab this trash can, I'm like running behind him, like calling his name, like, so-and-so, turn around, because he's not going to make it out the door. I know he's not. And get it right in front of him in time. He just starts like puking up in the trash can, and all of his buddies are like, yeah, we dared him to do this. He's like, what are you doing?
What in the world? That's so funny because, being a youth pastor for like 9 or 10 years, I don't have very many throw-up stories. Like
Oh,
you do.
really?
Yeah. All the kids, I don't know, maybe because I was a high school pastor and you were middle school, so maybe the age difference,
We talked about that one podcast where the kids got the norovirus, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe we did.
So bad.
Yeah, we called it Camp Closer was the title of our camp. Closer to the Lord, is what it's supposed to be. But we called it Camp Closer to the Toilet because like everyone was getting sick and throwing up.
Okay, Justin, the norovirus incubates in an hour.
Oh,
It's
wow.
so fast.
So if you get exposed to it, you'll start throwing up within
So
an
what
hour.
happened is we stayed at Calvary Corvallis first overnight because Bradley was just too expensive. So we wanted the camp to go longer. So one night at Calvary Corvallis, and then we would drive over to Bradley. So when everyone was sleeping in the rooms, one kid had the norovirus. And so we had some people split up in different rooms, but everyone from this one church that was sleeping in that room all got sick, like pretty much. But they didn't know that they were sick yet. It incubated, but they weren't sick until we got to Bradley. And then all of a sudden, like, a third of the camp was sick, and people were going home. It was nuts.
Puking. They had whole cabins full of sick kids that were just throwing up.
It was bad. Anyway.
And the vomit went to the horse's bridle that day.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
They called it Puke-ageddon.
I think we just lost a lot of our viewers.
Oh, man. Oh.
Talking
The
about
cringy side of youth ministry.
You could have like a warning before you watch.
Warning. This podcast talks about
may
puke.
talk about puke. Yeah.
Hey.
Well, another bodily function to give you a story.
There you go.
I may not be the best for car rides longer than an hour, because if you want to make good time, I'm usually not the guy to bring along because we have to stop a lot. But I was actually surprised because we just got back from camp, our first camp this year, and I was like, okay, we're gonna try to make a good time. We went around near Albany, Corvallis area.
Did you say
like,
Albany?
Albany,
Oregon?
Albany.
Oh, is it Albany?
Albany.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were going to Albany, Oregon, and I was like, okay, we can stop in Roseburg. That's like halfway. One stop, that should be good. We get in the road, everybody's packed. I'm like, okay, has everybody gone to the bathroom? They're like, yeah. And we're like, sweet. We're driving. We get on the freeway. Someone's like, I need to go to the bathroom. We didn't even make it to Phoenix, and then we had to pull over.
Sounds like last year for me.
It was impressive.
Or 2 years ago. Remember when I drove y'all?
No.
And Blaze had to go to the bathroom like every 5 minutes.
We don't say kids' names on the podcast, but we will say Blaze's name.
Because his mom is listening. And
you have that coming, Blaze.
But yeah, sounds like that same trip. Sort of.
So funny.
5 times within an hour, wasn't it?
Oh.
Something like that?
No, I didn't stop. I was like, sorry, bro, you're going to have to hold it.
Oh,
But for all like the funny, like hard things that you experience in youth ministry, like bones being broken, kids getting injured. I mean, because it happens. You do your best to keep kids safe, but I mean, kids will always find a way to get hurt. I had this kid, they're playing like The Ground is Lava on this playground set. And at that age, they're growing. Weird things are happening with their bodies. And, you know, they're just not very coordinated. It's actually really funny when they hit that stage and they have like this larger body, but they don't know what to do with it. And so they like trip on themselves and fall over. And it's hilarious. But they're playing The Ground is Lava. And one of them's hanging off the side of the playground set. And this is just before a Sunday morning service. And someone goes to tag him. So he decides to dodge by totally letting go.
Oh, nice.
Like, and he said he was falling, and he was like, oh, I should have, like, tried jumping or landing. But he was thinking that on his way down. He didn't do anything. He just hit the ground that way. And he comes running up to me, and his wrist is actually on a different level from the rest of his arm. It was so bad.
Ooh.
And he got fixed. And I think the funniest thing, if you're listening, you're cringing. You're like, oh, my gosh, that's horrible. This is the funniest thing. His dad's a doctor, and his dad's like, so we send for his dad. His dad comes out of service. One of like our friends who was a nurse was there and like splinted his arm like right there on the spot, like built a splint and splinted it. And his dad comes down, his little sibling, and he turns around, he sees his son, he goes, all right, get in the car. And he like tells his little girl, he goes, go get your sister. And she's like, what's wrong? He goes, tell them that so-and-so broke his arm. And she goes, again, and like turns and runs off. And apparently it was just a thing for this guy.
Man.
Yeah,
There
so
are
funny.
always the same. I had similar. It was from another church, but came and he broke his collarbone for like the third time in the last.
There are some kids that are just
some
injury
kids,
prone.
man. Yeah.
Okay, last story, and then we'll get into like the good stuff. But there's this one kid that I had, and he's just the funniest kid. Like, and they kind of traveled around. Like, his dad did big construction jobs all over the world, and so they would travel a lot. So he was only in our youth group on and off from time to time. But just the funniest kid ever. In the first camp that he came, he was always eating something. I'm like, what are you eating? And it turned out he's just eating Ricola. like cough drops. Like, his parents would just give him like this huge bag of cough drops to eat. And I'd be like, give me those. And like, I remember the first camp we were at, he like handed me like, I don't remember, like a couple of cough drops and some wrappers. And I was like, thank you. And I'm sitting there. And then we're going through cabin time. And then he like, taps my shoulder, whatever. He's on the bunk above me. And I look up and he just hands me a whole wad of empty cough drop
He's like
wrappers.
taking it out of here, and
No,
he has
for
some
real.
in his sock.
He
and-
knew I would take him, so he gave me a few, and he's just sitting up there and eating the whole bag.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, so every year after that, I knew when he came, people would be like, oh, so-and-so's back in town. He's coming to camp. I'd be like, oh, great. And like the rest of the kids would get on the bus, and I'd literally stand out there. I'd be like, so-and-so, wait here, like in the foyer of the church, and it'd be empty, me and him, and all the other kids are on the bus. And I'd be like, hand it over. And he'd be like, and like unzip his bag. And one year he pulled out, it was like a 20-pound bag of cough drops.
Oh, man.
I'm like, oh my gosh, dude.
Does his
like,
parents know about
I have
that?
no idea, but I remember being in the church. I'm like, I didn't even say what it was. I just said, hand it over, so-and-so. And he was just looking at me, and then he unzips his big old bag and pulls out this huge bag of cough drops. I'm like, where'd you even get cough drops in bulk?
Amazon.
And then I showed up there, and he had a 10-pound bag of pistachios he had hidden as well.
Oh, those are good.
Oh, that's
They were
better.
good. I was fine.
That's
I told him, I
better.
said, hey, I
Yeah.
won't take those if you share. So it worked out.
Oh man.
So that's the crazy, wild side of youth ministry. But, you know, there's nothing like being in a room of children that are worshiping the Lord. And I know, Brett, you've experienced that. And Justin, you're starting to experience that. Man, I remember being at this camp, and we probably had like 75 kids there. And to see just these kids, no one's asking them to stand. No one's asking them to raise their hands. We don't have the greatest band on stage. We weren't even at the nicest venue, but here we are in this small sanctuary worshiping. A group of leaders is leading a set, made their own full band set, and they're playing. And the kids are just worshiping. And kids standing up and raising their hands. And, you know, I've seen kids just cry and genuinely out of worship and connecting with the Lord. And I mean, it's so, so powerful. And you walk away from that and you go, man, I wish adults knew how to worship like that. I mean, that's the childlike faith that the Bible talks about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most powerful parts about camps is just seeing them spend probably more time with Jesus than they ever have. And it's usually the last night of camp when we'll have like the afterglow, the hour of worship, and the amount of kids who are just hands lifted. Some of them are on their face. Some of them are just bawling in the back. Just because of the work that the Lord's doing in their heart during that week. It's super powerful.
Kids getting baptized.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so
good.
sweet.
And I mean, that's what you're excited for camp, for a retreat, you know. And I think this is a little plug, but if you are listening and you have kids or, you know, or grandkids even, and they don't go to camp, camps are so important. I think that, you know, a lot of people can call it emotion, right? Like they can say, well, they're just getting emotional because other kids are getting emotional. But I've seen so many times that genuinely kids are broken, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that can only happen because they're getting away from their normal complacent lifestyles that they've maybe have, you know, their routines that they're falling into. And they get away and go to a place where maybe there's no cell service, you know, and they can't text, can't Snapchat,
Well, a lot of camps,
can't all
you
that
take
kind
the
of
phones
stuff.
from them.
Exactly. Yeah, we do that. So they don't have the things that are maybe pleasurable at home, and they're able to come and just like the Lord speaks. I mean, and a lot of times we do see it the last night, but that's because the Lord is speaking for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And then finally they're just like, they get to a place where we're like, man, I just need to surrender to the Lord. It's so sweet, so powerful, you know?
No, I agree, Brett. There's just something about it. Getting kids away where they can be with peers and kind of on their own and express their thoughts about God. I mean, I love the small group times. Sometimes it can feel super shallow. You got maybe 11-year-old kid in your group talking, but in that, I've just seen kids really come to know God on a deeper level and come to deeper conclusions and deeper realizations of their faith. And I think God is so good that way.
Yeah.
It was like that quote that they said, the Bible is deep enough that the theologian could drown, but shallow enough that a child could swim.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the truth of the gospel. And you really get to experience that in youth ministry, the deep truths of the Bible being played out in a simple way, being taught in a simple way to these kids, and to see their lives changed.
Yep.
I think that's one of the joys of youth ministry, is watching a kid grow over a 3-4 year period that you're with them, and kind of walk out of that youth group and be like, man, I did not think, you know, that guy was going to be who he is. And yet the Lord's working in him.
Absolutely. Yep.
Sometimes it takes more than 3 or 4 years.
It
I still
does.
talk with the guys up north, and at the church I was at, and when they tell me like, oh, so and so is teaching the Bible this week, I'm like, what? So and so is teaching the Bible in your youth group now? That's crazy.
Yeah, I remember leaving to move to Georgia, and we were there 6 years, and when we came back, just seeing a lot of the kids were serving and, using their gifts, their talents. Like, it was almost like a flip. I came back and they were doing what I used to do. And, there's just nothing better than that. And I think it's hard in youth ministry because you do want to see change so quickly. And that's just not the case for many reasons. One of them being that their brains are still developing and they're still learning, and there's lots of peer pressures and things going on in their lives, or there could be family issues, and so I think the joy of youth ministry is to understand, and this is the same with adults really, but to understand that as I'm pouring into this kid, I'm in it for the long haul, right? It's not like, hey, I'm going to pour into you one time, but I'm going to consistently like love you and care for you, and I think that's where you see a lot of the fruit over time, as the Lord just begins to grow them.
Yeah. That's your key, Justin.
Justin, how have you been feeling? You've been doing youth ministry for how long now?
2 years.
2 years? Being the leader of it, right? 2 years?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, you can talk about camps, you can talk about just Wednesday nights or Sunday mornings, but what have you felt like have been just some really special moments, or even like you've been seeing that where you've been pouring into certain people, but you've already seen them beginning to grow, even in the last couple of years, but you can just share with us like your experiences.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the more powerful times you have with the youth is in between Sunday and youth group time on Wednesdays, is like when you're going to their games, when you're playing video games with them until the late hours of the night, which is actually
hours of the morning.
It's a cool opportunity because kids are more vulnerable at that time. So then they're like, oh, I've actually been really struggling with things, and then you're like, oh, okay, and then but it's a cool but yeah, I think growing them with them, just like you guys say, just doing life with them and discipling them in that way, you can see a lot of growth. And going back towards camp, our first camp that we just got back from is a camp where they just go and they serve for 8 hours a day, or no, it was like 12 hours a day for like 5 days of the week.
That's camp attitude.
That's camp attitude, where they just go, they get paired up with somebody with special needs, and then they just serve them from 8 till 8.
That's awesome.
And just do whatever they want. They get their food. It's really cool. And every single year that we do, well, this is our second year doing it, but from the first year, so our kids just come back and they want to serve because they find out that it's actually really cool. And I think the Lord really meets them there, and they're like, whoa, this is a way I can serve the Lord and serve his people. And it makes it just practical for them. They're like, oh, can be fun. It's not like I have to work at a church. It's I can just love someone and just serve them.
Yeah.
I love that ministry so much. Camp Attitude is so awesome.
Yeah, it's cool you're doing that with the kids.
Yeah. And you guys, and kind of the deal is you go and serve, and then they let you come back to the camp, right? You just come for a week of just your own retreat that you guys get to put on. That's sweet.
Yeah.
Do like a fun retreat.
Yeah. We get the facilities for like 3 or 4 days. It's the 15th through the 18th this year.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
And we're getting boats this year, which is sick.
Woo, woo.
Boats for what?
There's a lake right there, Lake Foster.
Oh, is there?
Foster Lake.
Oh, Foster, yeah.
So we're gonna get like tubing and.
Yeah, Foster's pretty close.
That's awesome. It's near Green Peter.
And I get to come. Oh yeah, I'm going to camp.
Are you speaking again?
No, but he asked me to help out with worship.
You didn't ask me to help out with worship.
Do you want to come? I just
it's
thought
too late.
you were
No,
like senior
it's too late.
pastor. And
Wow.
Like,
wow. Just feel like I'm old now or
well,
something.
if we,
Brett's
if
actually
we
older
took both
than me.
of you guys.
It's okay.
No,
you know
I'm
what?
not.
No, it's all right.
I'm in
I
my
did my
20s.
time in the trench. I don't
I'm
want to
in
talk
my
about it.
20s.
You know what? It's fine. What I do, jealousy. What I do want to talk about though is there's a Misconception youth ministry where some youth ministers, youth leaders, take the kind of the ideological stance that in youth ministry, you're going to bring your kids to us, and we really don't want your involvement to a parent. And Brett and I both, he's smiling because we've both known youth pastors that have that stance, and they're like, no, you don't know what you're doing, so you're going to bring your kid to me. I'm going to teach your kids the way of the Lord and send them home to you, so they'll be better children for you.
You're going to give them for 2 hours,
yeah,
and we're going to make them a whole new person
yeah.
right, in those 2 hours.
So that's one extreme, and let me tell you, it's not true, and it doesn't work.
It's not true.
It's totally messed up. The other extreme is the parents who are like, we're going to bring our kid to you and you're going to change them in 2 hours and they're going to be a totally different person. That doesn't work either. And, honestly, I think I want to encourage parents who are listening to this. You play such a huge role in your child's life, directly and indirectly. And I know you know that. I got a kid now. It's funny watching him trying to do the things that I do. So we know that we really make an imprint on our kids, but the same with youth ministry. And so I remember kind of taking a philosophy and when I was doing youth ministry that we were going to partner with parents, and because we believe that no one's going to bleed more, care more, sacrifice more for the child than the parent themselves.
Right.
And parents are the greatest asset you could ever have as a youth minister. And in that approach,
and they cook.
And they cook,
which is great.
And by the way, you parents, you are like the biggest blessing to a healthy youth ministry.
Absolutely.
I had parents that come and did volunteer stuff, who drove kids, who pitched in last minute for camps when things weren't going right, who cooked food, who made things happen for us, and who were there for me too as a leader. Because they know how hard their kid can be. That's why they're sending them to church, and so they're there to encourage you, and that was a blessing. But I would say I got to see how beautiful it was to see parents making the most of youth ministry by encouraging their kid to be involved and working with the youth pastor and saying, hey, this is what we're teaching our son at home. Yep. This is what we're teaching our daughter at home. And kind of working as a team with the youth ministry group. It really was a huge blessing. And then I got to have the parents back, as well. I had so much fun talking with parents and feeling like, hey, I don't ever want you to feel like I'm trying to usurp your role or, do something like, no. We're trying to teach our kids this at home, and we like it when you're reinforcing it as well. And so I would say for you as a parent, you have a huge amount of influence over your kid, even if they don't realize it. Yep. And I saw parents do the coolest things to get their kids to camp, to get their kid to come to youth group. Even parents who were like, maybe I was going to make you go to bed right now. But I remember kids playing video games with me because I would try and get online. And you do that too, Justin. Brett, you did that. When you're in youth ministry, try and find kids playing a video game and play with them and talk.
No, we didn't have live back in those days. We just sent letters on paper to each other.
That's right. That was a pretty long time ago.
It was a while ago.
When you weren't riding dinosaurs. I'm sorry. You were my
I
high
was
school
too
pastor.
fat to ride a dinosaur.
No, we played video games. When I was in your high school group. Oh, wow. Anyways.
Anyways,
let's go back to it. But I would hear a parent come in and be like, all right, son, it's time for bed. And they'd be like, oh, I'm playing with Cody. And they'd be like, oh, you're playing with Cody? That's fine. Why don't you keep playing? And I'm like, what are they doing? I'm getting tired. I'm ready for bed. But I saw what they were doing. They were trying to encourage their kid to, okay, we want them to go to church. We want them to connect with their youth pastor, all these different ways that we can encourage it. And even when your kid doesn't respect you, they may not see it, but you have so much influence in their life.
Absolutely.
And so keep encouraging them to do the right things. Keep encouraging them to read the Bible. Keep encouraging them to hang out with a youth group, to go to camp. And they may be like, I don't really want to hear it from you, mom and dad. But you're actually imprinting them, and they're actually receiving it from you. And what's funny is eventually they're going to be like, hey, I want to go to youth group. And to them, it's their own idea, but you put it there. And so I just want to encourage you as parents, especially here at ACF where we're at with Justin. That's our heart. We want to partner with you. We want to come alongside of you and serve you and lift up your arms in any way you're weary and minister to your kids alongside you.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. I learned a couple things with that because I totally agree. And I think parents, if you are feeling like, man, I don't have the time to maybe come and serve and come and cook or go to camps or whatever, that's totally fine. Just what Cody was saying, just pouring into your kids when they're not at youth group and encouraging them to be a part of it. But I think even more than that, get to know your youth leaders, get to know them, get to know Justin, get to know Aiden, who's stepping in as an intern for the middle school ministry, get to know them. When I was in Georgia, we always encourage parents, hey, invite Brett and Jill over for a meal. And we'd be like, that's totally fine, And so we'd have, I remember some of our best friends, their last names are actually the Yoders, just like me. And the first month, I think we were there, they invited us over. They had a kid who was a sophomore in high school, and we became really, really close with them, and they always supported us in everything that we did. And so it's just getting to know them. I think I learned that the first year of high school ministry in Corvallis that, there's some hard things. And so I got an email that this parent didn't feel like his kid was plugged in enough. And so just it was hard because I felt like I was reaching out to that kid, but the parent had never come to meet with me. You know what I mean? And so I was like, well, why don't you come meet me? Or, I was convicted too. I should go talk to you on a Sunday morning, but it's hard when you're in your youth ministry room and you can't always get to the sanctuary by the time people are still there to meet them and all that kind of stuff. So I really just encourage parents, go pick up your kid maybe at the youth room and get to know the pastor, get to know the leaders. One thing that we did in Georgia because I learned from that, and I was like, okay, we got to change that. Just like you were saying, getting the parents on board. We would actually do a lunch right after church.
That's a great idea.
And we would have the students serve their parents food, and then the parents can just and then the students would go and do something else. We'd have leaders watch them, and I would just hang out with the parents to get to know them and kind of share some of my concerns maybe with things on their phones, different apps, different things going on. I would encourage them spiritually, biblically, here's what we're going through on a Sunday morning or a Sunday night or Wednesday night, and what you can be asking them questions about. And it was so good because all the parents had really good questions, really good feedback, and they wanted to be more and more involved, Yeah. And I think that's so huge. It just helped youth ministry so much when you have that.
And Brett, I want to hit on that too, because for me, some of the more influential people, in fact, some of the most influential people in my life, when I was serving at Calvary Corvallis, were parents to some of my junior high kids. They had sons or daughters in our group, and these were men and women of God. The parents who were just great men and women of God they cared about their kid. They cared about how their kid was growing in the Lord, and so they took an interest in me. I was a young single guy, and they were like, well, who's reaching out to Cody? Who's loving Cody? Who's there for Cody? And these parents took me in, and it was great because I would get to spend time with their student, their child. But I would also get to spend time with them, and they helped shape a lot of my ideas for what does it look like to have a calling? What does it look like to be married? What does it look like to lead a household? And I'm forever indebted to those parents that were mentors to me and picked me up and loved me, and they fed me. I mean, I was like a broke youth ministry guy. Whenever I was hungry, they'd be like, hey, just come on over for food. And I would text me like, hey, what are you up to tonight? And they'd be like, we're having burritos. Why don't you come join? Or, we're doing a family pizza night. Why don't you come over? And those people were like my family.
Yeah.
It's a good way to be involved in ministry.
Yeah.
The way to the youth pastor's heart is through food.
That's true. And coffee.
Except for I can't have coffee.
I remember teaching one time, and I put coffee in an illustration. It was Sunday morning. So, obviously it was Sunday morning. It was for the adults, the main service. And I put,
which is a big deal if you're a youth pastor and you get called.
It is. Yeah, it is a big deal. And I did an analogy about coffee because, like I say, I think there's lots of similarities with the Bible and coffee and stuff like that. And so afterwards, I got so many gift cards from parents of these kids that were like, hey, you need this for coffee. I was like, got $100 or something like that to Starbucks and all of these places. It was so cool, man. So awesome.
It just makes me think. I think of when I left Calvary Corvallis and came here. I had been the youth pastor there for 5 years for their junior high program. And when I left, those parents and leaders and friends of mine, they threw us a party. I mean, there was so many people there because, you've been working with kids for years. And I just got to be honest, they blessed us with more gifts and money than Laura and I got when we got married. And we had a wedding of 350 people. Wow. We had tons of money gifts for our wedding. But there were so many parents who were like, hey, you're moving, starting a whole new ministry. Like, your house is going to need new furniture. Like, here's a check for $1,000. And just this crazy like that.
Wow.
And just blessed us. And so part of me coming to ACF and getting plugged in and being able to settle was because the parents from my former youth ministry, they sent us out with a blessing. So don't ever underestimate your role, parents. I mean, the role you get to play in your kid's life, the youth pastor's life, the church's life. You know, I've been forever changed, and now I'm here serving this church, ministering to them out of the love that I've received from other parents from my junior high group.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty powerful.
I was gonna say, I think young kids, they learn, and they are oftentimes referred to as sponges. They're like sponges. They just learn so many things. Especially, I know Kalana is our daughter, learning how to live, learning how to talk, learning how to walk, all these things. They just want to learn so much. And I think there might be like a switch maybe around the middle school age where they're trying to learn how to now fit in instead of learning how to do things, but more like learning personality, like absorbing that. And I think that's why the change, like when they go to camp, they just absorb Jesus. They're there and they see, and then that's why it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the same with being at home, like being a parent. Like they're there and they're there around you all the time, so they just absorb whatever you're pouring out into them. So yeah, I agree with Cody. It's a huge role.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great calling, being a parent. You know, I also think about the pressures our youth are facing today. Yeah. And this is another reason why it's unreal why we're having this good talk. I know all of us have experienced it, and we're experiencing it more and more in this current day and age. But I would say never before, because all these things that the kids are struggling with, that our culture is struggling with, that's pushing on children, it's not new. When I think about it, it's been a struggle for man. All of it has all the way back to the beginning almost. Yep. And I mean, you check out Sodom and Gomorrah, those guys were struggling. There's nothing new under the sun, Solomon would say. But this is what is new in our day and age, is never before has it been promoted and celebrated and accepted on like a public level as it is now. And that has put so much more pressure on our kids, so much more pressure on young people who are trying to walk with the Lord. And it is often that I counsel with a younger individual who is, and it's not like counsel, it's like, you know, mentoring, because we're not professional counselors, but who is struggling with just what the world is pushing on them, and struggling to fight back, struggling to stand up for their faith. And that's another reason why I think the role of parents is so powerful. I mean, you are in some ways the guardian of your home. I just encourage you, you know, pray for those kids. You know, I think one of the reasons the camps were so successful, we get there and kids would get changed and saved and maybe baptized and worship and cry, and the Lord's just touching them, is because they had parents at home who were just praying. You know, and our church would just pray. I mean, when you were gone at camp, they had prayer meetings 6 days a week at the church Brett and I started at. And they would pray for you in those meetings while you were gone at camp. Just pray and plead for God to work. And that's why I just encourage parents, pray. In fact, if you're not coming to our corporate prayer time and you got time as a parent, you drop your kid off here for youth group, would you just come in, even if it's 15 minutes, and just pray? Because it's not uncommon for us to pray for the youth while we're in there and just ask the Lord, because that's what's going to be the game changer in these kids' lives.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was thinking about, you know, even with parents who, and I'm not a parent, so it's hard for me to give parental advice.
It's
and
like,
I can't
like pay rental.
Yeah, I can't give advice, but I have seen so many kids that on a whole different spectrum, where one kid might have parents that are really conservative, you know, and I'm not talking politically, like religiously, spiritually, really conservative, not letting their kids do anything. And I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. And then you have the extreme where they don't even know what their kids are doing half the time, you know? And, but again, I'm not going to give advice, but I've seen where kids are the most influenced by their parents because their parents just have a love for the word, you know? Parents that just, like, they get home and they just want to read the Bible, you know, and they want to read with their kids. I know a lot of men that I look up to where every night they just want to read the word to their kids and talk about cool stories in the Bible and all that kind of stuff. It's so powerful to have a youth kid who gets home and their parents are talking about Jesus, like my parents did that. We had a devotional every morning, and honestly, there was a period in my life where I was like, I don't want to do this, this is the last thing I want to do is read the Bible. But man, it influenced me so much to have parents that were hungry after God, hungry after the Bible. And I also want to speak to single parents because
man, that's a hard role right there.
Because that's really prevalent right now in our society, I think, is single mothers, single dads. And first of all, like, we love you so much. You're not alone.
Yeah, the church is here for you.
The church is here, and we know how much of a struggle that can be. But just what Cody was saying, just your power of prayer and influence over your child, even though you're the only one they're raising that student, like, it's so, you have such a huge role also, and to know that the church can like come alongside of you and help you. I've seen how parents, I have a really close mom and her son that they became my family in Georgia, and just to see how much she was blessed by the church and the youth group, like just coming around them, and so I think it's so good, so powerful, and really touching. Those are the things that like stay with you for a long time.
Yeah, let that faith community, your church, be that support for you. Mm-hmm. The beautiful thing about the church family is you're not in it alone. Yeah. And, I got to be honest, I'll just say this, that when I was youth pastor, there was always a struggle for sometimes single parent families or single income families to send their kids to camps or retreats or events that we were doing. And I always told parents, I said, and I would tell students, I said, don't let money hold you back from coming. And, I've never seen a student, I would tell parents, I've never seen a student not go because of finances. Like, God will always make a way. Yep. As a church, we're gonna come together as a family to help make a way to support you and your kids. And even here at our church, if you're part of ACF, the last 2 camps, Justin, I think it's been, you've come and told me that you have people, when we announce camps we have people in the body who come up and tell us and say, we don't have kids, anymore. We're grown and old, but we'll pay for people who can't afford to have their kid to go. And so God's going to make a way for you, so I would just encourage you to lean into your church, try and encourage your kid that way if you can, especially if you have a church where the youth ministry is solid, where they love the Lord. And I know you can't say that for every church, but if you have a church, you're listening to this podcast, maybe you're not here with us, but you're somewhere else, but you have a church that's like that, just encourage your kid to be there. What would it take? I know my parents, I look back now and I see how much they sacrificed for us, because we were the kids where we were from a poor family. And my parents, one thing they did do well was they would put the word in front of us constantly, and they would encourage us to pursue church and pursue God. And if we wanted to do that, they would move mountains to make it happen. If it meant my dad getting off of his job early, he's a self-employed contractor, to drive us 45 minutes to the church we were going to, and then drive us 45 minutes back, whatever it took. They were going to make that sacrifice happen. And all my siblings are walking with the Lord to this day. That's just the grace of God, but they did such a good job of just encouraging us to pursue the Lord. It's like, you want to go on a missions trip? We don't have $1,300, or actually it's $2,700 my first missions trip. They're like, we don't have that money, but they were willing to go through that process with me in faith and step out. And I tried fundraising and all that, and God made a way, and I went to the missions, and it changed my life. So don't let that hold you back. Like, God's gonna make a way for you. And I had great leaders. I had guys like Brett was my pastor, and some of the guys on Brett's team, I think of Chris Lang. Did you ever listen to this, Chris? I owe you, man. Chris would drive 45 minutes from Corvallis to Dallas to pick me up and drive me 45 minutes back. And so if he drove me there and back both times, that was an hour and a half, actually 3 hours that day. He'd be on the road, picking me up, taking me back, and then driving himself home. God's going to make a way. You just don't know whose hearts he's going to move on. So just encourage your kids. And if that is you and you're struggling, feel free to reach out to the church. Say, hey, man, I really want our kid to be involved, but this is where we're at financially. This is what we can and can't do, and we need some help.
Yep.
We had a high schooler that was going to go on when we were going to go to Mexico the first time, and we got to the passport agency, and he didn't have any of his paperwork or anything, but they let him have his passport. It was really cool.
When we went to Seattle together?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's a crazy trip.
it's a crazy trip.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
The Lord totally just paved the way.
I didn't realize he didn't have any of his papers.
He had like maybe one, but he was missing at least 3 of the
I
big
didn't know
documents.
that.
But the guy was like, you know what? I'm just gonna prove you. And we're
That's
like,
crazy. You seem nice. You seem like a U.S. citizen. Here you go. That's crazy.
Oh man, it pays just to show up.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Justin, you have anything on your heart? Youth ministry, parents, kids, leaders. This is your chance to be like, leaders, you guys are awesome.
Well, yeah. I want to thank all my leaders. We've had a lot of leaders be a part of the high school and the middle school program, and it's a big thing to do that voluntarily, just to come and serve the youth.
Yeah.
Because it's a big part of your time that you're carving out of your schedule. Usually you're staying up late, you're playing games. So especially at the end of a day, when you want to go home and just eat some ice cream and lay on the couch, eat some chips, whatever you want to do, just to come to church and then pour your heart out to them in games, that you will use your body in games, and then pour out your heart in small groups and just being available for the kids. It's really huge, and especially not just at youth group, but throughout the week, texting them and doing those things. It's a big thing. So thank you, all of you volunteers that are watching. Yeah, greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
I thank all of my volunteers too
Yeah.
from the past 80 years.
I'm like in preaching mode right now.
Oh, here we go.
It's not
Okay.
good. It's not good. But I do want to give some final thoughts. And I'm new to the parenting game. And my son, he's going to be a year old Monday. So, I mean, what a blessing. I got so much to learn from him. So I need advice from you guys. But when it comes to kids in junior high school age, I've done a lot of years of serving in that time and seen a lot of different parenting styles. And this is what I would say from it, especially in light of our current world that we're living in. Don't be afraid to have hard conversations with your kids, honest conversations. I know it's hard from a parent standpoint. It's hard from a youth pastor standpoint too, but you don't have it all together. It's hard to have a conversation when you don't have it all together, but it needs to be had, because if you're not having it with them and they're not hearing it, let's say at a church or a Christian group, then they're hearing it from the world. And that's where they're learning, and that's where they're getting their ideology from. And chances are, if you're following Christ, it's not the ideology you want them to have. So don't be afraid of the hard conversation. I think you need boldness, just trust God and go into it with grace and love and compassion. But I think there is a place to ask some hard questions and be real. And don't do it from a holier than thou spot. I think we all know that. We've all experienced that from our own parents, in some ways. And, I think if you can come to it from a sympathetic standpoint, like, hey, I remember being your age and I can't even imagine what you're facing now, but I would like to talk with you about this. I think that's important. The second one is the power of indirect influence. I mean, there was one family in our church that was so good at it. I mean, they found ways to get their kids to church or around church people all the time, because they told me, they're like, we're telling our kids this stuff and they're not listening, but they listen to you. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they were super creative with it. They're like, oh, you want to go to Costco with Cody? And they'd be like, oh, we're going on date night, and Cody's coming to babysit, and
Yep.
I mean, just crazy stuff like that. And any way they could get their kids around church or Christian people or leaders, I mean, they just did it all the time. And I've admired them for that, because they realized that even though their kids weren't hearing them in person, indirectly, they could influence their kids to hear from people that were saying the same things. So I think it's okay to be crafty as a parent in that way and say, okay, Lord, my parents did it to me. And then the third one would be, I said it earlier, but just prayer. And, pray for Justin if you're a part of ACF, but pray for your youth pastor wherever you are. Pray for those teams. Mm-hmm. Pray for those young people. Would you consider finding a way to support them? I mean, maybe you're just totally overwhelmed and you couldn't do that. And if that's the case, see how they can support you. Maybe call and say, hey, here's where I'm at. I can't even get my kids a ride to church. Could you come pick them up? I know we do rides here at ACF. And chances are your youth group would love to help you find a way to get your kid there. But if you are in a spot spiritually and with your family, a situation where you could say, hey, you know what, we could actually take on a young leader from the youth program and just love them and mentor them and not be in it for agenda, not be in it to influence them, but knowing that in blessing them, they're going to be a blessing to our children, to other people's children. If you have that capacity, maybe pray about reaching out to Justin saying, hey, or to your youth pastor at your church and say, hey, how can I be involved? How can I serve? You know, I had a dad who, I mean, he could have ran the youth group. If he had told me to do something, I probably would have done it. He was voted the 2-3 times in a row, like the junior high pastor, not junior high pastor, junior high teacher out of all the districts in our area, whatever, of the year, like multiple times. He got this nomination. He was amazing with kids, strong believer in a public school, teaching kids leadership, teaching mathematics. And he would come just to sit there and be a support. And he didn't try to lead the youth group. He didn't try to change things. He just wanted to be there and be present. Just whatever I needed. If I was going to a camp and I need another leader or parent volunteer, he would just come and just sit in the back, even though he was this gifted teacher and speaker and funny. And I was so blessed by him. And as a young pastor, I was able to come to him and say, am I doing this right? Am I teaching the kids well? And just hear him say, yeah, dude, it's all right. Or here's what I've learned when it comes to kids this age. And maybe that's you. And you could just come and be a blessing and just say, Justin, what do you need? Do you need me to sit in the back and just, snap my fingers at kids? Do you need me to come and go to your camp as a volunteer? Or do you need me to drive kids, bring meals, whatever? How can I be involved? So pray about that, because I think it makes a big difference in the youth ministry. And I think it also makes a difference in your kids' minds too. Mm-hmm. I mean, what you value, oftentimes subconsciously, I think the kids will value it. I mean, there's times kids will reject it, but I know in my own family, my parents put such a value on the Lord that we just felt burdened by it, even as kids. Like mom and dad value God above anything, and they tithe and they do all this stuff. And I remember being a kid, that meant so much. And so when they said to us, you know what, we don't put sports in front of God because God comes first. I mean, I remember being a kid and my coach being like, we're going away for a tournament, and me just saying out loud, like, I cannot go with you because I cannot miss church. Like I had picked up from my parents the value they had placed on God. And so as much as you value it, I think that's going to make them value it as well.
I think too, being an example, and this is really hard for a lot of people, but being an example of what it looks like to evangelize to other people. Yeah. And what I mean by that is like I've known parents, I think you even have a couple in the youth group that bring other neighbor kids, that don't just bring their kids, but they bring other neighbors, and they just say, hey, do you want to come hang out with youth, middle school or high schoolers at our church? They play games, but they also read the Bible, and just being an evangelist, because it's going to teach your kids like, hey, I need to invite friends to come to church. And I mean, a lot of us have SUVs nowadays, so you can pile in the kids. Even if you don't have a student that comes to our youth group or church, but still inviting that neighbor and being like, hey, do you want to be surrounded by other kids your age and hang out? And because this is really just for ACF, but it can be for anyone. But the 4 S's, I mean, we want to see people get saved, and we want students who are in that hard place of teenagers and being taught a lot of crazy things and not really knowing who they are and what they believe in, all that kind of stuff, to have an avenue where they can come know about Jesus. And we believe he's the way, the truth, and life, right? So that's what we want. And so maybe you're a parent and you're just like, man, I feel burdened for my neighborhood. I just feel, I know there's a youth kid here and there's a youth kid here, and I just want to invite them, talking to their parents or whatever, to youth group. A lot of parents don't say no, Yeah. So I know that my parents, they switched off with this other family, and the family wasn't super involved in our church, but they would come, every once in a while. And so their son wouldn't go to youth group that much, but my parents was like, hey, we'll commit to taking him to church if he'll go to youth group. And so they would drive, him and me to youth group, and it was so good for him. So, it was so powerful, and it taught me a lot about what that looks like. So, but anyway.
You have influence in other kids' lives. I mean, how many stories of people that we know who got saved as a kid in their friend's home because their friend's parents were Christians?
Yep.
We love you guys. I just want to say thank you to all you parents. You guys make a huge difference in your kids' life day in and day out, and oftentimes it's a thankless job. So thank you for what you're doing. Keep up the good fight. Know you're going to reap in due season, Paul says, Absolutely. If you don't lose heart.
Absolutely.
I would say cue the music, but Jonah left.
Thank
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us here. ACF, the Verified Christian Podcast. We'll catch you again next time. God bless you.
Now what?
We hope this topic inspired you in your adventure with the Lord. Stay tuned each week for a new podcast. And if you want to support us, not only can you subscribe to our podcast, but you can also spread the word with other friends or family. Maybe it would also be a blessing to them. Well, until next time, may the Lord bless you.